I'd like to introduce you to the tool which is developed by Rithamworks, which is called as Rithamworks Recon. So this is a comprehensive reconciliation tool which has configurable features so from your like structure of sources to your reconciliation tool. Everything is configurable. So that actually makes it a very quick and easy solution. So the main features are it is easy to configure. So as I told you, that user can define the sources. There's no restriction on the number of fields. We can handle any data types, be it decimal or varchar or integer. Then on the top of that, once you define the structure, you can define your own rules. So that actually gives you flexibility that whenever there is a change in your requirement, you really don't have to go back to your programmer. Right? So that actually can be handled by yourselves. And this actually we achieved using the effective dates. That actually helps you to track the changes as well as like whenever that on the effective date, whenever those changes actually needs to be performed. So our backend jobs, which actually runs on a daily basis, will ensure that those activities are certainly be taken care of. And essentially, it's very easy to understand in terms of the configuration wise, and you get the like essentially the dispute part very easily, and even the resolution has been certainly very effective. And the way it has been developed is it can actually be used for any kind of a use case. So primary the use cases could be in banking or healthcare or in insurance and logistics. But what we are essentially saying is wherever there is a data involved from more than 2 or 3 systems, it is imperative that you need a reconciliation kind of a facility. And like in terms of with the additional facilities, what we have been able to achieve is the performance. So that actually has been the like I would say greater achievement from a tool perspective. Let's look at the demo of the tool. Let me try and log into the tool. So I'll use my login and password. So once you actually log in, the tool has been given a security where it actually a 2-factor authentication. So I need to enter the OTP, which I will actually enter. So this is the OTP I received. I'll enter the OTP. So once I get the OTP, what I have provided over here is like different kind of setups which are required for different use cases. So these are the common masters which actually comes with a pre-populated data. And in case your organization has some specific requirement, we can actually go ahead and add that. So typically, if you look at it, currency, calendar, or location, then the reason codes, those are the common masters which are required. Additionally, there is something specific that is required by your organization. We can certainly go ahead and have it configured for you. Once the common setups are actually being handled, the next process is you are defining the company for whom the reconciliation has to be performed. So in this case, to define your company, so when you are defining your company, we have provided the facility of defining your ownership status and other details. More interestingly, if there is there are multiple relationships that has to be mapped within the for that organization. So it could be a group company, it could be a company under same management, it could be a branch. So we captured that information, and which actually turns out to be useful while reconciling the data between these different entities which actually are running their business. So once this setup is done, then we have provided the employee registration. So these are the super users which actually can be defined, or the users which can be defined for the system. So with this setup, even we have the role access, which actually I'll cover right in a few minutes. So that actually where you set up your like who's who in terms of your set up your company, your set up your employees. Now I'll actually try and cover one interesting factor about the API hub setup. So what we have done is here, in terms of if you look at it, the API, which is application programming interface, turns out to be probably a trickier task in case if this is not left to the configurations. How we have done it over here is, again, this is an effective rated record. So we have set up like essentially we call it as a standard setup. So this is the standards which we are setting for your organization. So this actually includes client ID, client secret, and also in terms of what are the kind of requests you are going to make. So it's going to be whether publish or consume, then the type of APIs, then the protocol, then the format request for response that is being used, even the authentication, type of communication. So like I defined for my company, I can define it for the other company, they say bank or whosoever. So I can define their standards. So that becomes probably the initial part where I define the standard protocols. Once that is done, it actually helps me to create the APIs, which actually using this information, actually I go ahead and define the, like at the each level, what is going to be the field mapping that is going to take place. So whatever is being done behind the scenes for APIs, I think we have been able to achieve this, and this works out to be far better when you have to actually integrate the data and you have to actually pick up the data from particular sources. So this turns out to be a very handy kind of a utility. Now let's look at it in terms of what we really do in terms of the reconciliation. So as I mentioned earlier, in case of reconciliation, there is no restriction on your sources. So you can define your channel name, source name. There are actually, you can define your file type. So we are supporting almost all file types commonly used in JSON. So that's the format that will be used. Then again, this is, as I told you, it's effective data kind of record. And so what it does is, if there are future changes, that actually can be handled through configuration by you. So now I come to the part of where I try and define the source. So this actually sources, you can add as many fields as you want to, and that actually helps you probably how it is like completely configured. So you are actually not at the mercy of the programmer. You can actually go ahead and define your sources. So once you define from where the data is likely to be, what is going to be the structure of that, the next logical point is in terms of defining the reconciliation rules. So here, if you look at it, I can actually go ahead and define the reconciliation rules. Let me take this one. So I think this is actually, if you look at it, this is the Recon type is 3-way. So when it's selected 3-way, we are supporting up to 4-way. Right? So it actually helps you, you can select the sources and you can define the criteria. So in this case, say between source 1 and source 2, supplier ID should match. Between source 1, source 2 and source 3, product ID and product would match. Customer address should match for all 3. In case of price, it should match between 2 and 3. And order ID has to match for all. So the field names are different. I think that is being supported by the system. So it gives you flexibility to define your own reconciliation rules, and that's actually available with the superuser. Once that is achieved, there is one more interesting feature which actually talks about defined probable match. Many times what happens is you are not able to actually reconcile the transaction basis the criteria which you are using. But in reality, if you check it, there are certain transactions which are actually matching in terms of the amount or whatever. So there is a likelihood that those are actually are the candidates for the probable match. So you can define those criteria over here. And once you define those criteria, that actually will be used when you perform the reconciliation. We are actually taking this data. So whenever in the dispute resolution, it actually helps the user to get a better match whenever I think some action is not against. So that's about when you have set up the rule. Once the rule is set up, the next process is next logical process is you actually go ahead and upload the data in the system. So what we are doing is here, you can create the processes. Next, you can create the process like load data. then you once like you select all the source names, then once the load data is complete, you can actually then run the run reconciliation. So while doing the load data, there are certain validations which are being performed. So like some of the validations are, for example, like your header data. If there is a header file which is actually getting loaded, so the checkpoints within the header data and your master like details data is always confirmed. So for example, in terms of the number of records in the detail file, if there is a count which is provided in the master data, so that count is matched. If there is a transaction amount, total transaction amount which is provided in the header file, so the what system does as part of the load is some of the details file is being like checked, and if it is matching with the header total transaction field, then only the data is loaded. Otherwise, there are actually error messages which are thrown. Also, system checks for the duplicate data. It also checks whether like whatever structure that has been defined by the user, whether the data has been loaded in conformity with that structure. If that is not done, then there is a like error log which is generated, and that is being available to the user, and user can correct that mistakes basis the log, and then actually he can again load the data. Once the load data process is complete, then the reconciliation basis the rules actually will run. Once the reconciliation is run, the results are available to you under dispute resolution. So in dispute resolution, so this is the actually reconciliation name and the sources. Now here the details are available. So within these three sources, like the total number of transactions are available, 10, 10, 10, and out of that, right, not reconciled records are also available. So if you click on this, it actually provides you details of like where the difference could be. And the system is designed in a way where essentially if it belongs to your data or your source record, then you can go ahead and make the correction. So that correction when you submit would get recorded, and like it will be considered as a reconciled kind of a transaction. This is like the other, it is matching with the other sources. If that source belongs to say third party, say to like in this case say to Mantra, then what system does is you can go ahead and make that record over here. System does not change the status. So what it does is it actually sends a recommendation to the to the owner of the source and requests them to correct the data. So in the next run, whenever he corrects the data and sends the file back, the transaction will get reconciled. And more interestingly, what we have done over here is, see, there are actually different hierarchies which are followed within an organization. So we have, for handling the dispute resolution, we have created the workflow. So here, like if you want to set some limits, say few dollars or whatsoever, depending on the authority matrix which you follow, you can actually set that limit. You can set the approval level also. And more importantly, if the company size is larger, you can actually do this basis your role. In case it's a small organization, you can do it basis the name of the employee. So you can define the activities, next sequence number. There is a provision for escalation also. So a person in the essentially who is supposed to take an action, if he does not take action within that time frame, then automatically it gets escalated to the next level. And on the top of that, we are actually sending the email and work list is also being generated as part of this workflow. And like if you can actually take a pack of SMS or WhatsApp, then we provide that integration as well. Additionally, you can define the SLA days, and like this is SLA days. If there is a reminder that needs to be sent, even you can send those reminders. So it actually helps you to track the activities which are getting performed for the dispute. So it actually gives a report about where are we, and that actually gives you far better control. And we have kept it relatively open on the dispute side. So what we intend to do is, as a part of implementation, we understand your organization hierarchy, understand your business process around that, and then like we configure that. Again, this is, if you look at it, it is completely configurable. There is no coding that is required to perform this. So once we what we say is reconciliation anyway we go ahead and do. It actually is excellent in terms of the performance because what we have done is about 0.2 million kind of a rows we have been able to process in about a minute and 20 seconds, which includes like loading of the data, validation of the data, plus running the reconciliation. So we say reconciliation is anyway hygiene. So what we are trying to achieve with this is essentially the analytics piece, which is going to be an interesting feature of this product. So if you look at it, typically in reconciliation, let's take a case of about write a file which has about 12 columns. And typically, if you look at it, what is being done is the ID is matched, the transaction amount is matched, tax amount is matched. But what we are ignoring is the most important 9 fields, which actually does have information about your product mix, and which actually gives you better insights into your business when you are actually interacting. So what we are doing over here is we have captured that data, and this is the like in this case we have taken a data of job cards for the company, and we actually taken the data for last 10 years. So what we have done is here we have analyzed like in terms of the number of job cards which I am receiving, like what is their category, which are come under because there was an accident, which is non-accident case, there is some other reason, or because of there is a failure of a part on the warranty side that actually a vehicle is visiting to the workshop. So in this case, what we are doing now, we are in the process of doing it, is we are planning to give in this space a facility to the user where he can actually go ahead and make the changes. So for example, he says there is a reduction in the accident percentage by about 5%. So how the data would look like and what is the impact it would be on the whole business model. So we are actually trying to integrate a couple of models which actually would have enable your forecasting. So that's the piece currently, I think it's under development, and that should actually be ready in another 4 to 6 weeks kind of time. Okay. So that's actually about the tool. And so if you ask me, right, in terms of it, like our experience has been like users are quite happy with the usage and the performance of the tool. And if there any specific thing that needs to be configured, because since it's a configuration, it actually even the turnaround time is very quick. So thank you very much for patient hearing. I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.